Okay, we are going to take a look at a sample paper that is, I've basically taken bits and pieces from different papers so that we can look at it. When you get your paper back, the first thing you want to do is you want to look down at the bottom to see what the actual score is. And so you can see here that you have a score of 50 out of 60. So it's not a horrible score, probably could be a stronger score. And you can see that that's broken down. So the student position is actually very good. Sometimes kids are like, well, why didn't I get 15 out of 15? Well, that last point is really for times when the student, I read it and I go, wow. If you read the actual AP rubric, they're looking for that last little tiny push to be something that is insightful, that is powerful, that is something that most students would not be able to come up with. So if you have 14 out of 50, call it good, move on. But you can see here that there are some areas that this paper could use some work in. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at this paper, and we're going to take a look if this was the paper that you had handed in. And this might be similar to a couple of yours, because what I did is I pulled papers that were very sort of indicative of what I was seeing in a lot of the papers. And so if it's very similar to yours, I may have done some copying and pasting in part based off yours. And we are going to look at how it is that this paper earned what it earned, and if you were going to rewrite it, what would you do to make it better? So we can see that the student position actually earned a very good grade. So in Nietzsche's Joyful Wisdom, the author's proofreading is good. Let me put the better pen in there. The author's willingness to ignore morality makes his philosophy unrealistic. So now I know that you're going to focus on one aspect of Nietzsche, and I know that you're going to focus on the student position, which is unrealistic. And that's why really student position got a very solid grade here. So let's take a look at the next bit. He suggests that morals are useless facades, and that shows a misunderstanding of moral principles. What is that? Okay. Now, he suggests that almost sounds like it's going into a fact, but it's not. Look, that he misunderstands, that Nietzsche misunderstands moral principles. So that is part of how he's realistic. So why is he realistic? Well, reason number one that he's unrealistic is that he misunderstands moral principles. So that is a good claim. So now let's take a look at the next bit. What do you think of this? When he describes his opposition to charity, he calls those acts of kindness submission and the acknowledgement of weakness. He describes men with morals as tame animals who feel their beliefs are shameful sight and in need of the moral disguise. Okay, so right now, clearly that is evidence. What do you think of this evidence? Okay, so right now, the way it stands, we don't know if this is misunderstanding. My guess is that I know where the student is going, but the trick with evidence, when you are doing something at a college level, your evidence is not going to be able to stand on its own. So somebody could very well look at this and go, well, how in the world does this show misunderstanding? Well, what is it that should pull it back? Your commentary. So let's take a look at the commentary. Before insulting the value of goodwill, he should look at situations like war where people have no control of the world around them and lived through tragedies. It would be selfish to simply say deal with it and turn away without offering some sort of support. This is the commentary that is trying to tie this evidence up to this claim. So how well do you think you did it? Oh, the commentary, the evidence here is I would say it's pretty good because I thought I knew where the student was going. But the commentary falls apart. And because the commentary falls apart, the evidence is now weak because it's not tied together. So up here, he describes men with morals as tame animals. And he says that is a misunderstanding. So let me do some underlining here. Tame animals is a misunderstanding, according to the student. That it's a shameful sight, and that is a misunderstanding. And these misunderstandings prove that his writing is unrealistic. Now, you can spot the problem here for a couple of reasons. First of all, I am seeing a lack of unrealistic, and I'm seeing a lack of the word misunderstanding, which means this commentary does not in any way go back to the claim and the position that's being proved here. So just by the fact that the words are missing, that these words are missing, that should tell you that you have a problem down here in commentary. But here is the bigger problem. If you tell me that there's a misunderstanding, and this is your evidence, you have to tell me, how is this a misunderstanding? Why is morality a misunderstanding? Why is that beliefs are shameful? Why is that a misunderstanding of moral principles? So maybe here you're going to use a type of commentary called elaboration. And elaboration is where you pull in other examples that support you. And I thought that's where we were going to go because it brought up situations like war. So you have to tell me when in war you have people that have beliefs, but that to call those beliefs shameful and tame would be a misunderstanding. So specifically, I'm looking for times when beliefs are actually, they're the opposite of tame. So they're looking for wild, dangerous, where it is the opposite of weakness. So I'm looking for times when beliefs are strong. Does anything in here give me what I expected to see? Well, no. You cannot be general. If you're going to use elaboration and say, let me talk about what this looks like in the real world, let me elaborate on further examples, you've got to get specific. So what would it look like if I had solid elaboration commentary in here? Okay, let us move on. Another way Nietzsche shows. What do you think of that transition? Yeah, that is really low level. Another way is something that I would expect a freshman or an 8th grader to use. I would expect to have transitions that are a little bit more sophisticated, where you tell me what's the relationship of this idea that just came to the next one, and I don't see that. So what do you think would be a better transition here? So let us keep going. When he talks about using other people, another way he shows his disconnect from society is about when he talks about other people. What do you think of the claim? Yeah, it's not really a claim. Right now, it's just a transition. But you know what? You don't always have to put your claim up front. So let's keep going and let's talk. Nietzsche constantly talks about when the stronger one assimilates the other, and this shows that Nietzsche has strayed away from human morals and has created erroneous ideas that stray away from the human morals of benevolence and succor. Nietzsche strayed away from fundamental human morals and created new ideas that encourage people to use other people for their own gain. Yes, this is still evidence because even though it's not a specific quote, it is still a specific idea from the philosophy. So right now, the slight problem with not putting the claim up front is we don't quite know what it is that this is supposed to prove yet. But when we know that we are now going to focus on the argument of assimilation. And Nietzsche's argument about assimilation is going to be contrasted against what this student says is natural, which is benevolence and succor. So let's take a look and see if we have a claim and see if we have got commentary in the end. This causes his philosophy to not appeal to many audiences. It's unrealistic to believe that this would appeal to most people. His erroneous philosophies about using weaker people also show he is disconnected from what the normal human morals are, and this causes those ideas to be undermined and considered unrealistic. When people consider something unrealistic, they tend to dismiss it and ignore it, which causes Nietzsche's philosophy to be ignored and undermined. Well, now there are a couple of things I do like here. Okay, so the first thing is the claim really is here that this is not going to appeal, that his philosophy is unrealistic, because the point of a philosopher is to convince people to change their point of view, and that this is not realistically going to change anyone because it's not going to appeal to people. Okay, so the claim is in the first part of the commentary. So we go evidence, claim, commentary, and let's take a look. Commentary. I am seeing erroneous, which takes us back to unrealistic. Disconnected takes us to it's not going to appeal. Normal takes us to it's not going to appeal. Undermined, not going to appeal. Unrealistic takes us up to our topic. So here, what do you think of the commentary? Okay, it is better. But here's my next question. Does this commentary have any assumptions in it that really need to be backed up? Oh, yeah. This student is saying a normal human is going to reject selfishness. You got to prove that. Now, could you? Sure, you could use elaboration. You could go into a hypothetical. You know, if someone saw a drowning child, you could go into a more traditional elaboration by going into real examples. Maybe you would even look up, you know, how many people have died trying to save others. My guess is going to be a lot. You could give an example of that. You could give a contrast. So that if selfishness were the normal human moral, then after a hurricane, you would see human beings being selfish. But the reality is the vast majority of the time, human beings pull together. They help each other. Widespread looting after a natural disaster is actually quite rare. And because reality contradicts what Nietzsche says it should be, therefore Nietzsche is wrong, normal is going to be to not be a selfish butt-face. But the problem here is you do have an assumption, and that assumption needs to be backed up. So, when I look at the actual, oh, of course the dogs are going to start barking. Ignore them. You should be used to them by now. When you look at where the points are lost, there are points lost on evidence, okay? Up here in the top half, The evidence is never fully explained, and that's the problem really with AP papers. If your commentary fails, a lot of times it's going to pull the evidence down with it. Now, if this top half had been the only part of this paper would not have gotten a weak grade, it would have gotten a failing grade. This half is actually much stronger, and you can see that in how often it is tied up to the ideas. So the second half here is much stronger than the first half, but it's still not as strong as it should be. You still have these assumptions. So what would I do if I was going to try and fix it? First of all, I would have to change the commentary up here in order to draw this evidence in more tightly. I also think I would pull stronger evidence. I am fine with one-word quotes, but acknowledgement of weakness seems that really is too general and it doesn't capture what Nietzsche is saying. So this is too generic up here. Commentary, we already talked about fixing it. I'm fine with you using the evidence claim commentary structure here, so that does not need to be changed. However, what does need to be changed is you have to back up this assumption that normal is not selfish. Okay? You also, I would really say that this needs to be edited for style. You have got some weird stuff going on. Benevolence and succor. Why do you need both words? You have so many high-level vocab words just in this one little section that this is starting to feel like a vocabulary assignment, and the two halves of the paper are not sounding anything alike. I would also say I don't see any higher level grammar structures here. So this student needs to find where the main idea is. Often that's going to be in the beginning or in the end, okay? And that needs to be put into a real power position. So I might choose to close this at the very end with a periodic sentence. Or I might use a very unusual structure, perhaps like an elliptical structure, to catch the reader's eye and to close it in a way that says, booyah! But right now, there is nothing higher level in the grammar. And the one time that I do see an attempt to really be higher level, which is the vocabulary in this section, that vocabulary is so limited to this section, and it is so almost overdone. You've got so many of these ideas in such a small area. It's so overdone that it feels awkward. So that's why the grammar did not get as strong of an idea. So hopefully this gives you some idea of how this might be rewritten.